Hello everyone, welcome back to Only Table Adventures. As always, I'm Dan the Baker, and we are here today with another episode of Eat This Game at PAX Unplugged. And I'm here today with Caleb. He's going to talk about the Triangle Agency.
Yeah, hi.
Who are you? What is the Triangle Agency? What's going on? Where are we?
I'm Caleb Zanuit. Triangle Agency is a paranormal investigation and corporate horror game where you play as extremely superpowered agents of a very controlling company that tasks you with capturing anomalies that have very similar powers to you and your fellow coworkers.
And then tell us about who you are,
Oh, yeah.
your experience in tabletop and stuff.
Yeah, I'm the lead designer of Triangle Agency. I am also an author of books, specifically most often for middle school age kids. And I am now the creative director of Haunted Table, which is the company we built to run Triangle Agency. And a lot of what I do for the company and for the products is a ton of the writing and then kind of being the one who fully submerges myself in the game so that I can make sure all the pieces kind of come together and connect.
About that. So yeah, I'd love to talk about, or for you to talk about, just like what is the nitty gritty. What is the actual system of Triangle Agency? Like what dice do you roll? What does that mean?
Yeah. So it is a unique system specifically for the game. It is 6d4. So most of the time you're rolling 6 4-sided dice, and you're looking for threes. At least one 3 gives you a success. Everything else creates chaos, which is a currency the GM can spend to make bad things happen to you. So it can go all the way to killing your character immediately, killing people around them, distorting reality to change how things work, or to create traps and tricks in the environment based on the anomalous movements, lure in your best friend into danger, that kind of thing. The GM is able to make those sorts of moves because characters are always deciding when they roll, not doing things like skill checks. So everything the character does to try to change the world gives the GM just a tiny bit of power to change it back, and try to force a conflict between you and the anomaly over the course of your investigation.
Yeah, it's a super fun game. We played it here on the channel over the summer.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it was very long
I was like,
ago.
what year is it? Who are we? Yeah, super fun game, super unique system, like you said. What was was it truly just like you were like, oh, it's triangles, we have to use the D4, or what, did it go deeper than that?
Oh, it was definitely a mix. Like most stuff with this game, I think, it started with, can we make this a joke? And then turned into, like, can we make the joke really work?
Yeah.
You know? So it was like, the D4s were always something we wanted to make happen because of the triangles, and then when we figured out the system, we really loved it, and so it kind of, we would have dropped it if it wasn't good, you know what I mean? But it did start as a joke.
Yeah, no, I do think this is true. This game is a study in committing to the bit of just like, you're like, hey, where can we reference triangles, make triangles important, like even to the fact of like 66 is like, it's 2 3s, 3-sided triangle, like that's, or 64, excuse me.
Yes, yeah.
And it's, was that, like, in the development process, like, kind of we're just talking about, like, was that something that you guys were like, how can we fit in this triangle thing, or did that come happen like naturally?
It happened really early. The triangle bit, I mean, the name of the game came very, very early in the process. And then a lot of the early development, before we even knew if it was going to be a real game, was like, can we do a lot of really good jokes, and can those jokes add up to something interesting?
Yeah.
And then eventually that snowballed into like a much bigger system, a lot of more interconnected parts, many of which have nothing to do with triangles at all. But whenever we could, we would come back to like, okay, our motif is 3s. Triangles are something we want to touch on as much as we can, because the company, the like main power that you're dealing with, gains power from the iconography and the symbolism of it. The repetition of triangles and 3s also gives the villains sort of like more power to work.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about just kind of like the inspiration behind the game, because it harkens back to so many like video games like Control, like FTP stuff, Warehouse 13, which is a callback to a show that I haven't seen in years. But what was like your two, like what were your like core inspirations going?
So you've already named a lot of the big ones that are like in the same space and have been like thinking about when we built it. I often say X-Files meets X-Men, mostly because powers that your characters have are way more extreme and way more intense than you're normally going to see in a paranormal investigation show with like really mundane characters who are like dealing with something huge. But so the X-Men part of it is like everybody has a super wacky, super strong power with a specific like domain. And then the X-Files side of it is that it's an episodic game. You're going out, you're performing these investigations, and then at the end of it, you're having to decide like, how do we handle this? How do we let the world grow from this? And I often think of the way the X-Files flow is like, regardless of whether there were aliens or not, at the end of the day, it's Mulder and Scully like making a choice about how the world changes.
Talking more about just kind of like the character and character creation, I love how every word I ever use went out of my brain. I love how the different types of character creation, like the ARC, all those various things that it kind of like. You're not just like a superhero mutant. You're also like you have a job, but you also have a life outside of that job. It like is like true to real life. Of like there's so many different parts of you, and even the like actual powers you have, they feel so out there and like world breaking, but also very grounded. Was that what was that like that development process of like developing what can these characters do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like a lot of RPGs, it was most of the work probably, was figuring out character creation. And like you're describing, there are three pieces: the anomaly, reality, and competency, which is your power set, your real life kind of struggle, and your, or I guess like the main thing you're dealing with in your real life. And then your competency is your job, which is your like agency assigned position that changes the way that you behave. Because the agency is a company, but it's one that I often joke is like, looking at what a company is from the perspective of an alien. Like, can you make it feel like a company? Can you play with the power of it without having to actually do, because it's a superpowered organization, it doesn't have to actually do a lot of what a real company would have to do.
Yeah.
So making those was really tough. The hardest part, definitely the anomaly powers. There's over 200 of them in the game.
Yeah.
Because everybody starts with 3, and each of those 3 can turn into 2 other things, and each of those 2 can turn into 2 other things. So every tree has something like 30.
Yeah.
And there's 9 trees. There's just so many abilities, and that was just like months of work.
Yeah.
And then the realities and the competencies had a lot more to do with like what's fun to roleplay at the table, and testing that and playing with what types of character already exists in role-playing games, and how we can give them like an interesting riff when they're put in a frankly pretty bad situation.
Yeah, it just it is such a nice mix of flavor and also like actual like mechanics of like here's what you roll, here's the actual like nitty gritty and stuff, which is something. Yeah, I appreciated that as a game master, because it gave the players a lot to play with. It gave them a lot of material to like improv with, and to like they're like, okay, well, I know my character, they're a caretaker, they have this thing they're taking care of, so I need to make sure that is a part of like what I'm talking about. Like I bring that up. Like it feels like it's like a fun improv game of like you have to pull 3 things from the hat. Like these are your attributes. Which I know Sean Ireland, he's an improv comedy person, so I'm sure that kind of also goes into like the kind of tongue-in-cheek comedy that is throughout the game.
Yeah, Sean and I both have a theater background, so a lot of what we did was playing off of like our history with comedy, sketch comedy, and improv, and trying to make sure that the game was able to flow between the like super funny and super like brutal.
Yeah. There's definitely those 2 tones there, but it doesn't feel like it's like the tonal shifts don't feel so abrupt, and like you were like, it's like it makes sense that it's like, oh yeah, there's also dark shit going on. My coffee needs to kick in more. So have you like worked in a corporate setting? Did that like inspire some of this at all?
Well, I've mostly worked for small businesses, and there is stuff in the book about that, having to deal with, what it means in any business for there to be like power disparities between people in charge and the people that are employees. Sean has had some much more real corporate experience with like big tech company startups that he's having to write stuff for. And so a lot of my perspective is as the sort of chaotic outsider.
Mhm.
Of course, he's only ever worked in like, bookstores.
Yeah.
But a lot of our our sharp corporate commentary comes from Sean's experiences and working from those. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I definitely want to mention the fact that, like, come the award season of the tabletop community, like, Triangle Agency got so many accolades and so much well-deserved awards. What was that? How was like that feeling? I guess just like for you personally, for your team, like, is that like so like reassuring? Like, yes, we made a good game. Like, how did that feel?
Yeah. Reassuring is a nice way to put it. Yes, it doesn't transform anything.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very like, it was a big surprise. The Ennies were going the way they did. We got best writing, best rules, and best game at the Ennies, and that was a huge surprise. And I am I'm very grateful that it gives us something where whenever we start to feel like, what are we doing? Are we really supposed to be here? The sort of imposter syndrome thing hits, that we have something to point at that's like, it doesn't really, there could be all sorts of complicated reasons why this happened, but it is there. We know it's at least worth something, you know? So that makes a big difference day to day. But mostly, you know, by the time the awards were happening, like the book was done, it was a thing we'd made, and we already cared a lot about it, so it was nice to feel that, but we'd already been feeling like, talking to people who are playing the game, which is ultimately a bigger deal.
Yes, definitely, yeah. Like I know Rowan Fioli, who was the person who convinced me to buy this game in the first place, was like singing your graces, I think, to every single person who had you.
She's so sweet. Yeah, she's always been such a huge supporter of our
and I think it's kind of like she told me, I found it, and I was like, oh, this is an amazing game. I'm going to tell everyone I know. And I think it became a pyramid scheme of like, oh, how can we get more people to know about this game?
Word of mouth pyramid scheme.
Yeah, which isn't that what just tabletop's all about.
That's true.
I'd love to know, is there, and all you're talking about this game, is there something that you've always wanted to like mention that you haven't had a chance to, like something in the process, or like some like joke in the game that you're really proud of, or something that you're really proud of?
Gosh, it's been long enough now that I'm like, is there a joke that I haven't been able to mention yet? I guess my closest thing to that to people here, if they haven't seen it, is that like if you get a chance, even if you don't think you're going to get the game, like crack it open to roughly the middle and just start flipping around.
Yeah.
But we've done so much like wild, silly stuff with the layout, and we've intentionally buried it so that it's like a fun surprise and hits people in a cool way. But if you haven't engaged with it, just go take a look at the amazing work in there.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Michael Schillingberg and Ben Mansky and me worked really hard on the layout and did some really, really crazy stuff in there. So there's some great jokes built in, and like the play wall, which is our like last section of the book that has a ton of abilities in it, is like full of, you know, these 200 abilities that I'm not even sure if any given player has seen. Like there are some abilities that I think might have never been used yet, and a lot of those have like inside jokes, specific like references to things like. So I would recommend going and hunting for those. I'm like scrambling to think if I have a real answer to your question by answering in other ways, but I think at this point, no. We've been able to talk about so much, and I'm just really proud of it.
You should be proud of it. So yeah, my last question I ask all of my guests here in this game: if you were to take a bite out of the Triangle Agency, what does it taste like? What's the mouth feel? What does it remind you of? Any food?
Yeah, when you asked me this, the very first thing that I thought of was like a scone that's like already triangular, obviously. It is sort of yellow, but that when you bite into it, you discover that the actual pastry part is so thin and it is filled to the brim with like raspberry and blueberry goop, you know, so that the second you take a bite, enormous mess. You're struggling to figure out how you're gonna get it. Things are already falling out the second that you jump in there. Very sour, but very sweet also. I think that's my image.
I see that. That tracks. That makes sense. Okay.
Or it's, you know, a tuna salad sandwich in a Ziploc bag.
Yeah, crunch. Okay. So yeah, I think with all that being said, I think I know what I'm gonna make. Alright, I'm back in my kitchen, and for the Triangle Agency, I decided to make a mixed berry triangle Paris-Brest. It starts with me mixing together all of our dry ingredients, which includes flour, sugar, salt, and baking powder. Then to a pot, I add some butter, water, and milk, and then I'm going to put it over a medium-high heat and let it boil. Now, the reason I decided to do a triangle Paris-Brest is because I wanted to take something that's not normally a triangle and make it triangle shaped. Paris-Brest is normally a circle. Fun fact, it is named after a bicycle race between Paris and Brest in France. And it's supposed to be like the bicycle wheel, but not today because it's going to be a triangle and that would make for a bad bicycle wheel. Anyways, after it's come to a rolling boil, I'm going to turn off the heat and quickly, all at once, add our dry ingredients and start mixing as fast as I can. We want to make sure all of the dry ingredients get hydrated as quickly as possible. I'm then going to turn the heat back on to a medium-high heat and continue mixing until a dough ball forms and there's a bit of a film on the bottom of the pan. Once that's done, I'm going to transfer our dough into a bowl and continue mixing it just to start cooling the dough down, because we don't want it to be too hot when we add in our eggs, or else it'll cook the eggs and we'll just have like scrambled eggs and dough, and that'll be kind of gross. Once it's cool enough, I start adding my eggs one by one. Now, it's 5 to 7 eggs. It really depends on so many different factors. I made 2 different batches of this. The first one used 6 eggs, the second one used 7 eggs. So from day to day, from kitchen to kitchen, it will be different. You just have to use your better judgment. Once the dough is a fairly loose but still held together consistency, and whenever you can like pick it up with your spoon and when it falls off it leaves a little triangle, that's when you know it's done. I did try to get a shot of like the dough falling off and there being a triangle, and then editing it and like drawing a triangle over it and doing the like X-Files song, because it's like, oh, triangle agency, haha, but then I couldn't figure that out, so just imagine that. Now that our dough is all mixed together, I'm going to put it on a tray, wrap it with saran wrap, and just set it aside at room temperature for about an hour. This just lets all the ingredients get to know each other, mix and mingle, you know? While that's happening, I'm going to make our fillings. Starting with our mixed berry compote, to a pot, I add some water and some sugar, and once again, I'm going to let it boil. Once it's boiled, I'm going to add in my fruit. I just used a bag of frozen berries, but you can use fresh berries, you can use whatever berries you want. It is currently the middle of winter, so if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's probably going to be hard to find fresh berries, but you do you. I added a mixture of blueberries, blackberries, and strawberries, and then for one more time, we are going to let it boil before reducing the temperature to a low heat and bringing it to a simmer, and continuing to mix and heat until a like syrup forms. You'll know it's done whenever you can draw your spoon through the mixture and it leaves a line. I'm going to set that aside to cool and move on to our strawberry cream. To a bowl, I'm going to add some strawberry preserves and sugar and whip them up, just getting some air incorporated. Then little by little, I'm going to add some heavy whipping cream, whipping as I go. Now, this is never going to get to like a stiff peak. It's going to be a fairly loose cream. That's what I'm after. If you want a stiffer cream, you can just make a whipped cream, or you can like just use the strawberry preserves, or you can just do, whatever you want. It's your kitchen, it's your mouth. Do what you want. Once it's all whipped together, I'm going to put it all in the fridge to set. Now that our choux dough has rested, I'm going to pipe our Paris-Brest. You should be able to get like 7 or 8 Paris-Brests out of this dough amount, depending on how big you make your triangles. The secret to piping well is knowing the amount of pressure you need to get your dough out consistently and just using that pressure the whole time. Because whenever you use too much pressure, it might make it, splodge out a little bit. If you use too little, it might be too thin. It's all, you gotta be consistent with it. Once they're all piped, I'm actually going to spray it with a little bit of pan spray. This pan spray is pretty much all oil, and spraying that oil on top of our dough is going to let it bake a little bit shinier, a little bit crispier.
So I preheated my oven to 425 degrees. As soon as I put my tray in, I'm going to drop the temperature to 375. We want that high heat to hit as soon as possible, but we want it to bake at a slightly lower temperature. And I'm gonna leave it in the oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. I want it to be nice, golden brown, and crispy on the outside. After letting our Paris-Brest bake and cool, I'm now going to slice them all in half. And this is my second batch of dough, which is why there's more on this tray than there was in the first batch. I just slightly underbaked the first batch, so they were like okay, but like not as crispy as I wanted them to be. This is what the color they should be. Then this is like the crispiness they should be. Once they're all cut in half, I'm going to put in our fillings, starting with our berry compote, just a small layer across all of them. I started small with a small amount on all of them and then added more later just to make sure everything got a good amount of compote. Then I'm going to cover that with our berry cream. You can see it's fairly loose. It kind of, pools at the edges a little bit. I'm okay with that. That was my desire for this. Then I'm going to put our tops back on the Paris-Brest, and I will see you at the glamour shots. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of Eat This Game. Please make sure you check out the Triangle Agency. It's a super fun game. Once again, I've been Dan the Baker. This has been Open Table Adventures, and you are always welcome to pull up a seat. Bye-bye.